You had 30 seconds to tell me, after all these years, what the inner game is all about. Being able to, look back on 50 years of watching, your work have an impact on the world. What would you say? And he said,
what if the biggest opponent you've ever faced was yourself? Today, on Unlimit Your Potential, Seth sits down with Ryan Sweeney, film and TV producer, CEO of The Inner Game, and a devoted disciple of one of the most transformative bodies of work in human performance history. We are talking about the inner game of tennis, the groundbreaking philosophy born of the legendary Tim Gallwey's iconic book. A work that didn't just change how we play sports, it changed how we think, perform, and live. This is a conversation about unlocking what is already inside of you.
Welcome back to Unlimit Your Potential. I am joined with a really special guest. This is going to be, I don't even know where we're going. I have ideas, and I'm excited to find out what will happen in the moment. This is Ryan Sweeney, connected to one of the greats in this space, which is Tim Gallwey. Tim Gallwey wrote the classic, The Inner Game of Tennis. He wrote a number of other inner games, so there's the Inner Game of Golf and some others, and you're taking it into the next, not just the next generation, you're taking the legacy somewhere that can live maybe in infamy, in some, I don't want to, create huge expectations, but I definitely am curious about this because this is going to involve talking about AI, artificial intelligence, how we can use the technology, how you're using the technology to take someone and their life's work and use it as a tool that can help future generations. So thank you, Ryan, for joining us today. This is going to be, something very unique and interesting. I would like, if you will, to kind of give your background a little bit, because I know you do have a sports background. Yeah. And then, let's see where it goes.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. And I don't have the sports background of most of the folks that might be sitting in my chair, but I'm very happy to be here and happy to humbly talk about my tennis career, so to speak. But yes, former competitive tennis player, and I was lucky enough to have been given the inner game of tennis by my coach, who was kind enough and wise enough to know that that's what I needed at the time. And after I read it probably a couple times, because 16 to 18, your frontal lobe is not there, and it takes a little time to really understand the profound wisdom that's being shared through that book. But it always stuck with me, and it always stayed in my tennis bag. And then it transferred after college. It transferred to my work bag, my leather satchel that's over there, because Shakespeare said it. He said, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players." Right. So, once a performer on my stage was the tennis court. I loved the stage. I studied some theater in college as well. So the stage and performance has always been something that I've just been so interested in and curious about. But as I went from a competitive tennis player to an entrepreneur, the stage changed to pitching in meetings, in front of boards, in front of clients, and the same underlying philosophy that I got from the inner game of tennis, that millions of people have gotten from the inner game of tennis and other inner game books, I applied in my entrepreneurial journey, which has high stakes and is riddled with failure, and the idea that we can perform, and you see this all the time between athletes and executives and leaders and people who go between the two, the golf course or in the boardroom or the tennis court or the marathon they're running. Right, there's so many things that we connect, and so I've been very grateful to have been a recipient of that book from my tennis coach, and to have it accompany me throughout my career and hopefully for many years to come as one of those staples in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always try to preface this because I've given the book to a lot of people, suggested it, that it's way more than tennis. So it's not just sports specific. It is performance oriented, but I think it's more general, that it's more of a almost philosophy that goes beyond into the human condition, if you will.
Yes. And I'll tell you the story about how the inner game sort of got started, because I think it is a fabulous one, and it's one that not everybody knows, and it's worth talking about. But it addresses this point, which is a lot of people. I know this story from Jimmy Rollins. Talk about baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Rollins, I think his girlfriend gave him the book when he was in a slump right before the World Series in the early 2000s, I guess, when he was playing for the Phillies. And his first reaction was, "Why do I need a book about tennis?" And that was Steve Kerr's reaction and a lot of other people's reaction when they've been given the book by somebody who cares about them, a coach, a parent, a girlfriend, whatever it is, a partner. And yes, it's not a book about tennis. Tennis was the vehicle in which Tim Gallwey, who was a tennis player, used to introduce this philosophy. But the story of how the inner game came to be is an amazing one. And even when the book was published, Random House didn't think it was going to sell more than a couple hundred copies, maybe 1,000 copies, because it seemed to be an obscure book about tennis, and why would that do very well? The story goes that the president of Random House fell off of his chair when he started seeing the sales numbers, because it was selling like crazy. Obviously not just in tennis, it was golf and business, art, the performing arts. I mean, it was like across the board. And people started to realize, oh, this isn't a book about tennis. This is something greater. This is something that is deeply rooted in Eastern philosophy that was translated in a way for the Western world at the right time and in the right way. And that's really what Tim Gallwey did. And yeah, the rest is history. So a book they didn't think it was going to sell more than a couple thousand copies today is considered the founder of modern performance psychology. Tim Gallwey is considered the godfather of modern performance psychology, and in many ways modern coaching.
Absolutely.
After he wrote the book, he was a tennis pro at a club in Carmel, and people started talking like, "Oh my God, have you heard that Tim wrote a book and it's like doing really well?" And he was sort of in this in-between place of, I'm a tennis pro, but I have this book. By the way, he was a completely unknown author, had never written a book before. And so where does he go from here? Writes another book, or leaves the club? He's not quite sure. And a guy came up to him after he stepped out on court, and the guy's name I'm forgetting, but he was a pretty well-known guy in corporate American history. He was at the time the new CEO of AT&T, and at that time in the mid-70s, it was one of the largest corporations in the world, if not the largest. And he came up to Tim and he said, "I want you to come into my company and change the culture of my company to a performance culture." And Tim Gallwey was like, "Whoa, I don't know. I don't know how to do that." And he goes, "Yes, you do. I read your book." So Tim Gallwey left the club, went to AT&T, and then went to Microsoft and IBM and Coca-Cola and Rolls-Royce and countless other companies. So he's also credited with founding the executive coaching industry, which is, I don't know the numbers today, but it's a big one.
Massive, yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah. So I like to say that in performance, which is just the human condition, you have pressure. Pressure is always connected to opportunity. The bigger the opportunity, the more pressure. Start to take us into the inner game of tennis through how Tim approached it, because you have a copy of the book, is that right?
I do.
So the book's not necessarily a big book. It's actually somewhat thin and small.
Yeah, 165 pages at a push. Yeah.
And there's a foreword in there by Pete Carroll.
Yes.
Is that correct? That's the 50th anniversary.
Yes, and an intro by Bill Gates, yeah.
Yeah, so you have Pete Carroll, who was with the Seahawks. They won the Super Bowl. I like to say, okay, how can you connect Pete Carroll to Tom Brady, to Steve Kerr, to Novak, all these greats? It's that book. and many others that you'll probably be able to mention as well.
Yeah.
Take us into, how does that relate to all of us?
Great question. I think it's worth going back to the what was going on in Tim's life when he wrote this, which I think is helpful context for helping connect the dots, so to speak. Most people believe that Tim was a good tennis player, which he was. He was the captain of his Harvard tennis team. Came home, sat down at the kitchen table, wrote the inner game of tennis one night, and then, became this smashing success, right? Mm-hmm. Usually it doesn't happen that way, as you know, and it certainly didn't happen that way for Tim. When he got back from college, he was suffering from really severe depression and anxiety, and I won't go into the details, but he almost didn't make it. And he had to overcome death to bring this thing into the world. He had to become an empty vessel, as he would say, in order to receive the kind of divine wisdom or spiritual wisdom that he needed at that time in order to see clearly what was wrong with the way people were coaching at the time, which was, and still, a lot of people still coach this way, but it's gotten better, which is over-verbalizing, instructing. Mm-hmm. You don't tell a baby learning to walk like, okay, well, put the right foot down first, and then shift your weight, and then put your left foot down and make sure you stand up straight and use your arm. Like you don't. Mm-hmm. We learn by seeing, and that natural, intuitive way that we learn is what he put a finger on, even as adults, in order to really learn something and teach something in a way that was going to get people out of their adult brains. He had to really bring it back to this intuitive self, which he calls self two. For those who've read the book or know the philosophy, know well, self one is the over-talkative, judgmental self that doubts and gets in the way and likes to talk a lot and doesn't shut up. And self two is this intuitive, natural self that learns by seeing, for example. And tennis was his vehicle in which he used to introduce this philosophy. But I think what resonated with people like Steve Kerr, Bill Gates, Tom Brady, Serena Williams, Ariana Huffington, Billie Jean King, whether they were tennis or not, they knew tennis at all or not, it was just that this core dynamic inside of us exists, and everybody could feel that they did their best work on the field or the court or the course when they were when self one was quiet and when they really they were trusting themselves. And so you really can, it sounds broad and ambiguous and maybe a little woo-woo, but you can connect that same philosophy, dynamic understanding across every area of performance. I mean, Al Gore said the inner game of tennis was core to him running political campaigns. He would give it to his staffers to make better decisions about how they got his message into the world. That's one of 1,000 stories I've heard from people who are really known, like Al Gore, and people who maybe are just the best local pool player in their small town in Brazil. It's the same. It's the same thing. And so it became a cultural phenomenon. And again, maybe the time at which it came out in the mid '70s, it was just the right time for a message like this, where people were reeling from Vietnam. The California sort of progressive mindset was prevalent, and so yeah, it did a lot of damage in a good way with all these coaches that were resonating with something that Tim had said about how we should coach and not coach. Mm-hmm. And then that just carried on So coach gives it to student, athlete or performer then becomes a coach, and it just sort of goes on and on. I don't know if I answered your question, but maybe that context helps a little bit connect the dots on how this became so pervasive.
And so one of the clips that I've shown people that I work with is the 60 minutes.
Yes.
So 60 minutes, especially back then, we didn't have a lot of the different broadcast networks. So we were really singly focused on just 3 channels, 4 channels. And
Not
so
exactly
60
what we experience today.
Not at all. So when he was on 60 Minutes, like he was central to our focus in our culture.
Yes.
And there was a well-known scene where he's teaching tennis to someone. There was a woman, do you remember?
Yes, her name was Molly Groger.
Okay.
And she was a 50-something-year-old, somewhat overweight woman in a muumuu who had not been physically active in 20 years.
Yeah. Never hit a tennis ball.
Never hit a tennis ball. And this story is, the Inner Game of Tennis started selling pretty well, and Harry Reasoner was this anchor on a show that I think would become 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
And yes, the nation had he had the nation's attention, every night.
And he was a cynic at first. He starts out, like, what is this?
Yeah, because he was a tennis player, and a struggling one, I think. And he was really kind of very skeptical. He thought this guy was a total fraud. He thought this was total California crystal-wearing woo-woo nonsense.
Yeah.
And he couldn't believe it, so he convinced his producers that they should fly out to California and make this guy, Tim Gallwey, prove that he could teach tennis to someone that's never held a tennis racket in 20 minutes. He just could not understand how that could be possible, given that he's been struggling at his country club for the last 10, 15 years. And the producers agreed to do it, and they cast a net out in I think it was LA that they did it. And they found just, the best sample group of people that would support Harry Reasoner's assumption that Tim Gallwey would not be able to do this, especially on live TV, and getting Molly Groger as one of them would be a perfect example of how this would fail on live television. But Tim Gallwey did, on live TV, help this woman very quickly play tennis better than Harry Reasoner. And at the end, Harry Reasoner's like, I can't believe it, but it's true. And what he introduced in that segment was this bounce hit, which seems so elementary, but the basic idea is that you want to give self something to focus on, something to think about. So when you're playing tennis, when someone hits the ball, you say bounce, and when you hit it, you say hit. Bounce, hit, bounce, hit. And it gives that part of the mind a job, so that self too, this intuitive self, even if you've never played tennis, or in this case it's tennis, but it could apply to other sports, it allows that part of the body that's seen tennis happen, that is not expecting to be a professional overnight, but absolutely can go out and play the game. And so that's what he proves with Molly Groger on national television. And then the book from there sort of went even more sort of mainstream, if you will.
Absolutely. So some of the references that I've seen is Tom Brady would read the book before the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Why would Tom Brady read a book about tennis before the Super Bowl? One of the greats to ever play his position, 7 Super Bowl wins, and he's reading Tim's book.
Yeah. I don't know Tom's story specifically, but I'm pretty sure someone gave it to him. Someone, a coach, somebody said, hey, this is, because Tom was probably not in Barnes & Noble browsing the tennis section or whatever section the Inner Game of Tennis was in, and thought, oh, this is something I probably should read. But like Steve Kerr and like Jimmy Rollins and many others who were given the book, I think Phil Jackson gave Steve Kerr the book, or maybe it was his shooting coach at the Bulls at the time. But somebody gave Tom the book, and that that core philosophy, the core message of the inner game, that you do perform at your best when your mind is as still as a glass lake, I think is one of Tom's favorite quotes from the book. And that he could, when the pressure was at its highest for someone like Tom Brady in a Super Bowl setting, what could he be doing or not doing? What could he be thinking or not thinking to take it out of self-one, take it out of that part of us that would allow him to go on the field and perform at his natural best. And I know, again, it sounds ambiguous, but this core message has permeated itself into most mental coaching and sports psychology and performance psychology. So there's something about reading the source of it that resonates so deeply with people, and I think that's probably what happened to Tom.
Yeah, what's been interesting in my work is that when we talk about humans being at their optimal level of performance, we have different ways of describing it. The flow state, being in the zone, being in the moment, being present, more or less the same thing in general. So I'm trying to help people get there, groups get there more often and longer. But what's been this really, I would say a paradox, is that my own story, my best race came when I was so sick I probably should have been in a hospital. And then I started sharing this with the people that I'm working with, the highest level of whatever sport it is, F1 or MLB, Major League Baseball or whatever it might be. And I'm collecting these stories of people being sick and then working with PGA and LPGA champions. And there's even a mantra, a phrase that they share amongst the people: beware of the sick or injured player, because they will be out of their mind, so to speak, because they're so focused on the discomfort, the distraction, that they're not focused on the ball going out of bounds, right? So that's been this full circle. So I've always made, and I make it even more and more because I collect more and more of these stories, that we're really trying to get out of our own way, ultimately. And so I try to make the point, well, that's great when we're sick or injured, but we don't have to get sick or injured in order to be at our best, right? Yeah. We want to be able to do this in a healthy sort of way. What's actually happening? Like, how do we create something that's such a dominant focus, like a sickness or an injury, that it can happen when we feel great?
I love that. I'm going to give you another story though for your storybook, because I'm a tennis player. There's a Russian player on tour today. He's top 10, top 15. He was top 5 at some point. His name's Andrei Rublev. Not a huge guy, skinny, but he just destroys the ball. He's one of the hardest hitters on tour. He's also known for being for having temper tantrums, for losing his cool, for breaking rackets. He's an emotional guy, and as many of us are. But there's a story that I think the one Masters 1000. So there's the big Grand Slams, and then there's the Masters 1000s. There's 5 of them, I think. And so if you win a Masters 1000, you've made it in tennis, and you've made the history books. And the Madrid Masters 1000, he was so sick, he told the press afterwards, for the last couple rounds of the tournament, I think he went to the hospital, something with he couldn't breathe. Like he couldn't breathe well, like he had to almost, I'm trying to remember exactly what he said and did, but he said he had to almost move his mouth in a way so that he could breathe, he could get air into his lungs. But he was so out of his mind sick that he was at the hospital at some point during this. Won the freaking tournament. I don't know who he beat, but to win any Masters 1000, And so I hadn't really made that connection until you said that you've been collecting these 6 stories, that story's always stuck out to me, because I think that's the only Masters 1000 he's ever won, is when he was sounded like deathly ill. But it's interesting that we have to get that out of ourselves in order to survive in that competitive performance environment, where self too, as Tim Gallwey would say, would be absolutely sort of the star of the show, because self one is so preoccupied by being sick. And so I'm sure that if I asked him, there'd be he'd have a field day talking about the connection between this physical illness or discomfort and the inner game philosophy. But a lot of what Tim, if it's helpful to talk a little bit about how Tim has coached people over the years, because I've heard Tim talk about people that have come to him, whether it's opera singers or professional tennis players or golfers that maybe are coming back from an injury and don't believe that they could get back to where they were or where they wanted to be at a certain time. And he would go watch them practice. And there's one story about a qualifier, a tennis player at the US Open, who was struggling with his volleys. And Tim showed up on court, watched the guy hit some volleys, and the guy was just talking and saying, I'm not hitting volleys the way I want to hit them. I'm practicing all the time, I'm trying, I know it's the thing that's holding me back in my career. And if I could just fix my volley, I'd make it into the first round, I'd win the first round, and from there I'd make it into the main draws of tournaments, and that would change my whole career around. And I'm older, and I have this one shot basically to make it, and my volley is the thing that's just in my way. And Tim, the way he describes it, or someone who's there, I think said it to me. Tim said, I think it's the only thing he said. He said, "What do you want your volleys to look like in a year from now?" And the guy went out there and hit volleys and said, and Tim just said, "There you go. You already have it," and walked off the court. And the guy won the qualifying round, and the next one, I think he won the first round of the US Open. So he wasn't sick, but this idea that what you want is already there.
Yeah.
And then if you just get yourself if you change the context, like Tim did there, show me what you want your volleys to look like in a year. He just did it. And miraculously, his volleys were fixed.
Yeah. It is so fascinating, isn't it? I mean, the human condition, but our mind, right? We have this thing that's a tool that's helped, obviously, through evolution. It's been, gotten to a certain point where it's served its purpose. But when you get into performance, I always say the nervous system doesn't really know if you're on a golf course or if you're actually hunting or being hunted.
Sure.
So we're trying to navigate this old machinery, and we don't really have any alternative machinery. So we have to kind of accept it and make the most of it.
Yeah.
And so I just find it so fascinating because it is the machinery. So it is like, we don't have another version of it. So it's so simple. It's literally, like I say, it's like your hand's right up, it's right there,
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the book, part of what we're getting across to this audience is that it's already inside. And it's probably way more simple than you realize. But I always like to say, power hides in the obvious. Right? If you really want to put something where no one will look, it's usually, inside you, right? And it's usually really simple. So it's simple, but it's not easy.
No.
And a lot of times it's not easy because it's simple. And you have to do it under pressure. And when you're under pressure, it feels uncomfortable. So you're going to be going, am I going to be the hunter or the hunted? how do I keep it simple when I'm that uncomfortable? That's the whole riddle that we're trying to solve here, which I think is fascinating. And Tim really brought that into the forefront to where we could actually even start to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, taking what Tim's done, do you want to talk about how you started to get connected? Because I'll share this part. Social media, okay? Social media, I started seeing the inner game. Like, I didn't even realize it was the inner game. I was just like, oh, these clips, this is speaking the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this coming from? And I kept saying, the algorithms probably were like, hey, you guys should meet.
It's pretty good these days.
Yeah, I was like, whoa. Yeah. Talking about Andre Agassi, that his matches were done in the shower 5 hours earlier by how he's talking to himself. I'm like, this is it. It's so simple, but that's so overlooked because most people want to make it into a big, huge, complex, shiny thing. And I'd see more and more of these things that you were putting out. I was like, okay, I have to meet this person. Or I thought it was Tim at the time. And then I realized that you and Tim are working together on this, however you describe it.
Yeah.
How did that come to be? Where are we going with this?
Yes. Well, thank you. I have a filmmaking background, and more importantly, the power of storytelling, as you know well. We're sitting here right now, telling stories, really. Mm-hmm. The power of storytelling through sports is, don't need to say much more. It's, when done well, there's nothing more inspiring, and the inner game stories, philosophy, its tentacles are all over the place. And so we're just aggregating stories about the inner game and putting them on Instagram, and they're very popular. People really, feel connected to it. I'm glad to hear that you said it's speaking the truth, because sometimes you're so close to it and you can't see the forest from the trees. And so to hear that from someone like you, who's been at the top of your sport and works with the best of the best across sports and leadership, means a lot. So thank you. I appreciate that, and I'll convey that message to the team where they can just watch this and and hear you say it. But yes, so I mentioned before my background as a collegiate tennis player turned entrepreneur, a software guy. I've been very interested in storytelling through building companies. And I know that being an entrepreneur, you are a storyteller 24/7, whether you know it or not. Mm-hmm. And that's why the inner game has been with me on that journey. My background in the software space is around voice-enabled AI technologies. So started with transcription technology. So this is being recorded. It would be transcribed by an AI, most likely, or an LLM that will put all of what we've said in words, and then will allow the editing team to clip it and search it and find the best bits and throw the bits out where, Ryan said something stupid or stumbled. And that technology is a very important part of the language models like ChatGPT, the transformer models that we know and are so used to today. So as I started to think about my love for the inner game, not only it's the impact it's had on me, but just from a business perspective, thinking, gosh, if I could go get any name in the world, the inner game would be it, because it represents so much. It represents so much and isn't limited, yet means so much to so many people. And so I felt if there was a way to get in touch with Tim and convince him basically to let me license his IP to build something that could take the impact around the world a million exit from what the book has done, basically. And so I listened to Self too, and I said, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think I can do. And so I found Tim through a friend of a friend, and made this pitch to him. And I said, I believe that we can democratize the wisdom of the inner game and the impact of the inner game to millions of people around the world using AI. And where AI is today is something that allows us to do what we're doing even a year ago, 2 years ago, really wouldn't be possible. So it's a moment in time where we can take a body of work from someone like Tim Gallwey and not just take it out of book form, but create something that can accompany a book, because a lot of us still want to read and hold something physical, right? This is important, and there's hopefully that never goes away, but it is also limited in its application practically, right? So I set out with a small team to build an inner game mental performance coach for performers, not just athletes, but you could be a PGA golfer who's doing great on tour. You could be a 16-year-old violin player who's got a concert coming up. You could be on the biggest stage in the world or the biggest stage in your world. The same inner battles happen, and not everybody has access to a sports psychologist or a mental coach, right? Not everybody has access to you. Even if they can afford it, they may not know where to go, right? You could be a teenager, you could be somebody that's a college player or competitor, you could be an executive at a company, and you need a coach, you know, and the inner game provides this trusted framework and legacy that, when combined with the powerful AI we have access to today, creates something quite special. And so we haven't launched the product yet, but we've got beta users that are very happy, that are saying, hey, you know, we are performing better. I ran that race faster. I got out of my own way to perform better on the golf course. And so that's how my story of knowing the inner game as an athlete and entrepreneur led to actually incorporating it into my business life, where I can hopefully try to help a lot of people have access to something that they wouldn't normally have access to.
So now that we're jumping into the AI part of the conversation, let's go through, I mean, for me, I created a website for my dad back in the day before Amazon had created a website. And my mom was always reading the newspaper. And she would send me all these sort of, the sky is falling, no one will ever share their credit card information, no one would ever buy their Christmas gifts online. I mean, now we would laugh, that doesn't even make sense, you know? What's AI bring into the picture? Like, why are people scared of it?
Yeah.
What are the challenges of it? And then where do you want to take it?
Yeah. Tim Gallwey actually said it best. And a little over a year ago, I interviewed him in a setting not too different from this. It was the first time I'd gotten to capture him on camera. And we were at a friend of his, a home of a friend of Tim and his wife. And it was a challenging day because of natural light was shifting, and there was an upstairs fax machine that wouldn't quite shut up even though I unplugged it. So I still don't know how that was happening.
Yeah, it's something like the ghosts.
Yeah, it had it out for me to make sure that I was on my toes and utilizing my time wisely with this guy. And so by the end of the day, I started feeling like, oh my gosh, I have not asked the kind of thought-provoking, insight-provoking questions that I wanted to ask of this guy, this legend who means a lot to me and means a lot to a lot of people, including yourself, and how he impacted your life and career. So I felt the pressure of wanting to, but also wanting to get something unique out of him. I didn't want to ask the same questions that everybody's always asked him throughout his career. And so I was feeling a little down on myself at that moment. And the DP looked at me and goes, you have less than a minute, by the way, because we were at the end of the day and our memory card was full and I could see it was flashing red and I knew that wasn't a good sign. Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, I have less than 1 minute. And in that moment, when again, you know this as an athlete and a performer, everything sort of got quiet, and not just on set, but internally. And I said, okay, I got to just get to the heart of the matter really fast. And so I told the DP, I said, get the camera really close, like uncomfortably close to Tim's face, where he's looking in the lens, like directly. He can't even see my face. And I asked him, I said, Tim, if you had 30 seconds, at this point, you had 30 seconds. If you had 30 seconds to tell me, after all these years, what the inner game is all about, being able to, look back on 50 years of watching, your work have an impact on the world, what would you say? And he said,
the most important part of the inner game is knowing how to trust yourself and knowing how to know yourself. Those two go together. We are more inside here than we know about, especially in the presence of AI. There's an AI in you that's more powerful than artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence sounds really intelligent because of its memory and its access to information. But boy, the intelligence of the human being knows no bounds.
The innate intelligence of the human being knows no bounds. And the camera turned off. And everybody in the room was like, whoa. Like people that were, doing the lighting that were half paying attention, we're like, whoa, did he just say that? Because it comes at a time where a lot of people are really afraid that AI is going to replace us, take our jobs, take our kids' jobs, create havoc in society. And there's a lot of people talking about that. There's a lot of people talking about AI having this enormous impact on the world financial markets, the job markets. And I think there is some truth to that. I think if you look around and you see all the cars driving on the highway, as I was on my way over here, and I'm thinking to myself, what do all these people do? What does everybody do? And I believe that there's a lot of redundancy and a lot of inefficiency that will be replaced by AI and will cause us humans to really think about, where am I unique and where can I apply the best of what I have to offer in society, in the job market. And I think it will create a large reshuffling of sorts. There will be, I do believe there will be a lot of layoffs. I think the pendulum will swing back in the other direction as it always does. People will hire people back again, but the jobs that they're doing are going to be different. The description is going to be different than it was before. And I think that's a natural evolution of technology and the kind of disruptive technology that we're talking about right now with the powerful AI models that are out there and that are coming out. But what Tim said was, AI is not there to replace you. AI, or what I believe Tim was saying, or how I took what he said as motivation and inspiration to do what I'm doing with the Inner Game Coach, which is AI native, is that AI is not going to replace us. It's going to give us it's a tool, and it's going to give us the flashlight and the magnifying glass to discover or rediscover this innate intelligence that we have inside of all of us. So if you're a performer, it's that powerful mirror for self-awareness, for self-realization. If you're an executive, it's not looking to AI to solve a problem for you or answer a question or make a shortcut, but it's using it as a tool to rediscover what you intuitively feel about a presentation you're about to give or a big decision you have to make. And so that's the role that I feel Tim almost imparted on me by saying that before the camera cut off, was that the inner game can be combined with this powerful technology, not as a replacement, but as a superpower to help us rediscover that intelligence inside of us that knows no bounds. And it's true. There's no bounds to what we can accomplish and the vision we can have for ourselves, right? That is not something that can be limited or replaced by anything but ourselves. So if we can use the technology as a way to help us understand ourselves a bit more, then that becomes something very powerful that I'm certainly excited to help bring to the world.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting time. In that clip, with your permission, we could insert it so that people can at least see in the show notes, maybe even
of course,
splice
absolutely,
in, so that they can see, because you shared it with me and I shared it with the team.
Yes, please.
Very profound.
And he says it way better than me. I mean, you can get it. You
said it really well, but yeah, Tim saying it, you can hear that this is a person that's seen it all, been a part of it all. Yeah. And he's not threatened by it. Yeah. He has a sense of the truth behind everything.
That's right.
And that's a really important thing to recognize, is that at the end of the day, I mean, for me, I've gotten more and more clear, maybe just more and more blunt with people, and say, I don't know if I'll teach you anything. I'll just remind you of things that you already know.
That's right.
And then we'll hold you at higher levels of accountability, because it's going to get more simple. And I think that AI can have that approach, that maybe you'll be able to write something that's a lot more sophisticated, but the essence still of you needs to be in whatever that is that you're putting out into the world.
You have to do the searching, right? That's the process of searching our inner world for this simplicity is something that we all have to do. We can't outsource that.
Yeah.
But if AI can give you tools to do that self-discovery in a way that makes it more consistent, that makes you a disciple of yourself more often.
Love that. That's a good one.
Then let's do that, right? And the word, discipline is this word that at least makes me think of like a school teacher or being reprimanded or being punished. I think it has the same connotation for a lot of people. But if you look at the root of the word discipline, it comes from the Latin disciple. And disciple means to learn. And it really is about being a disciple to oneself.
Yeah.
And so that one piece of information about the root of the word discipline can help us leverage the kinds of tools that are out there that just make it easier to do this kind of work. It doesn't have to feel like such a burden or a punishment or something like, oh my God, I have to do this, right?
Yeah,
it's like, I have to have the discipline to do this.
Yeah.
No, it's like, I just have to be a disciple of myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And, even, Tim says it, as you mentioned, it's Socrates, right? Know thyself.
Know thyself.
That's what I try to really circle back on a regular basis with people or groups that I work with, is that there's a process of awareness. We're developing awareness. Because what motivated me to become a national champion is the opposite of what motivated my brother to become a national champion. He had to get to know, or, he's the first person I worked with, so I had to get to know as his coach on the mental side of things. What's going to motivate Martin versus Seth? Seth, I'm the older, maybe birth order. I wanted to be a role model. I created this delusion, this sort of movie in my mind that everybody was watching every single stroke, because I wanted to have that high level of accountability, where every single stroke counted. I wanted to be the essence of perfection. That sounds crazy, but that's what worked for me. My brother wouldn't care about that. That doesn't motivate him. With him, it was, he's standing behind the start. Nationals, he's a dark horse, he's not expected. They had a lot of national champions and people that had qualified for the Olympics, and then my brother on the outside. And it was, hey, Seth did it, you can do it. Younger brother, what do they want to do? They want to beat their older brother. That's what motivates him. And that's what we knew, to push that button for him. So know thyself. Same results, completely different approach. And so that's what I think is really interesting about all this is, to go through it with some sort of idea that this is just an exploration inward rather than, what other people are doing or saying, or, it's in there and it's super, super simple. So with some fun, I've obviously wanted to talk to you for a while now. Let's talk some little simple golden nuggets, right? One of my favorite is Steve Kerr. When he was in an interview. Steve Kerr, he went to the same alma mater at University of Arizona, and so...
Oh, I forgot that,
Yeah, and so we're kind of like, he's a little bit older, but not that much. And so he didn't think he was going to be in the NBA that long. So, friend of friends, he bought a house, and he thought he'd only be in the NBA for a year or two. Then he gets with the Bulls. Michael Jordan starts winning these championships, gets trusted to take the last shot, the only one Michael Jordan would trust in that role. Then he goes from there to the Spurs, and he starts winning on the Spurs, and then he becomes a coach, and now Golden State as a coach. The guy just keeps
pretty good
winning.
coach.
Yeah, he's doing it all.
Yeah.
As a player and a coach, and then also winning gold with the USA team. So Steve Kerr, as a player, he had read the book, Inner Game of Tennis, and Tim had talked about a player that, and you might be able to name the names, it probably was a tennis player. And in the book, Tim had described pretending to be someone else. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So, for those who may not be familiar, it doesn't sound all that strange when I have two young kids and I see my daughter dress up and take on the part of the princess that she's playing. We lose that as adults, right? I think we all know that we lose that, and we get responsibilities, and our frontal lobe develops fully, and we've got to get a job and do all the things that make us functioning adults in the world. But that pretend thing doesn't go away, and it's very useful. And yes, Tim talks about in the book a tennis player who he was working with, who Tim coached or departed some piece of wisdom that said, well, who do you want to play like? And I don't remember the tennis player's name, but he said, I want to play like Pete Sampras. Sure enough, the guy started playing like Pete Sampras. And Steve's story is that he had always felt like he was in a slump in his career, and he didn't feel like he was the dynamic player he wanted to be. He was disappointed in his just one lane that he was sort of given, albeit he was given it by Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson, so it's quite a lane to be in. But I think later in his career, as he started to feel like, I know I have more, I feel like I have more inside, but I'm not able to access it. And so through the inner game of tennis, he read this story and he said, if I were to be any player, who would it be? And he could have said, Michael Jordan, but okay, I'm not going to be Michael Jordan. So who's somebody that's like contemporary, who is similar to me in terms of ability, physical ability and general skill? And he said, Jeff Hornacek. He said, Jeff Hornacek has just got this dynamic quality about his game. He was creative, and he just didn't feel like he was burdened by some of the lines in which Steve had to operate within, figuratively and maybe literally. And so he went out that practice and pretended to be Jeff Hornacek. And afterwards, all the guys were like high-fiving him, like, Steve, that was the best practice you've had all year. Like, way to go, man. And I think he says to himself, God, I had to pretend to be somebody else in order to play better. But it's true that something as simple as, visualization is something I'm sure you've used in your career and something you use with your clients, and it's something that that we use in the app that we're building. Visualization is a core part of it. So being able to visualize yourself as someone, how do they move? How do they wipe the sweat off their brow? How do they walk onto the court or the golf course or the boardroom? That has an effect on how you walk into the room. Just be a kid and pretend you're that person that you admire, that you think has that dynamic quality that you so desire, right? And that changed Steve's career, especially later in his career with the Spurs. You mentioned the Spurs. He was sort of benched for a while, and then he had this breakout game toward the end of the season, and they went on to win the NBA championship that year. And he was a pivotal player in that win for the Spurs. And then he obviously took it to the Golden State Warriors. I've heard stories of him putting the book in players' lockers that he feels need to read it, or he thinks would resonate for. Steph Curry being one who took it with open arms and swears by it, and I think gives it to players themselves. So there's this lineage of the inner game that continues, and I'm excited for what we're building to be another tool in the tool belt for people to have that visualization experience or guide to get to a place that would allow someone to have the kind of pretend to be experience that Steve had.
Yeah, I love it. So time flies. As we kind of get towards the wrap up of this, I take on my last name, of course, a little pep talk.
Yes.
What, whether it's through the wisdom of Tim, your own journey, experiences, maybe as a tennis player, a parent, what's anything that you would, to the general audience, or maybe a specific audience, what would you impart onto? No pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect off the top of your head, but
sure.
What would you suggest to people? What would you put out there?
It's funny hearing that, because I sit here as sort of a proxy for Tim, but I am, not the author, not the philosopher, not the person that's put this great work into the world. It's more, I think, about the inventor, innovator. The inventor is someone who spends their life work bringing something into the world, but often once they do, they're not the best person necessarily to take it to where it needs to go in order to reach an even larger number of people. And so I'm sort of more the innovator in this dynamic, where Tim's the inventor and I'm the one who, in some ways, feels a responsibility to take the torch in a way and put the inner game in a form factor that is relevant to everybody with a cell phone. It's hard for me to depart this wisdom, but if I were channeling Tim,
Yes.
if I were pretending to be Tim, the thing that I've noticed in all the conversations that I've had with athletes and coaches and people that have used the inner game, who are just or interested in the inner work and the mental game, it comes down to this one formula that Tim has in the book, which I'm sure you know, which is P equals P minus I. Performance equals potential minus interference. Basically, your ability to perform at your best is really, it's there if minus the interference. So what is native in our app experience is calling out what is the interference. What's your interference? Because once we remove that, once we give it a name and we call it out and we write it down or we put it in the app, because the app said, what's your interference this morning? We have it every day. It shows up for us every day in the morning and throughout the day. What is the voice inside of our head that's telling us to doubt ourselves, or that we can't do this, or could be imposter syndrome, whatever that voice is, that interference, call it out, write it down, give it a name, don't judge it, don't try to delete it entirely because it's never going to go away, but just call it out and observe it. And just the act of doing that, I've seen people get out of their own way more than anything else. And so it comes back to that formula for me, and what I've seen be very, very valuable to people at all levels of performance.
Absolutely, that's spot on. Would agree with that, 1,000%.
Yeah.
So whether someone's in the audience and they're going, I want to learn a little bit more about this, I might be curious, or someone on the other end is just like, I'm all in, I want access.
Yeah.
Either way, what's the best way to connect to you in what you're doing?
Great question. So Instagram is a great place to see the content that you so kindly recommend. Yes. And there you can find the website. You can put your email in. We have a newsletter that is quite popular that covers both inner game sort of core tenets or principles on a weekly basis, and then also goes into stories of athletes and different performers on different stages that are battling their inner voices to achieve peak performance, and it's often connected to the inner game, the book and the philosophy in it. But you'll also be able to get access to the beta of the app. So we're pre-launch, so it's not out yet. End of May is when we're targeting, but we will give folks early access, especially if they give us feedback, because that's how these things are done well, is you put it out there and you get feedback, and and you listen to people about what it is that they want and feel like is going to get them to remove their interference. Yeah. So Instagram, I'll make sure to give you our website. It's just theinnergame.app. Okay. So theinnergame.app. We also have, there's a new series coming out called the Genius Series. It's a contemporary take on TED Talks. Okay. Geared more towards the younger generation. They're 15-minute episodes, and the first season, there's Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F, trying to swear on your show. Daniel Pink, who's a multi-time best-selling author. Jesse Itzler, same entrepreneur, best-selling author, ultra athlete. And Tim and I were invited to do one of the episodes. So Tim starts it, and then I take it home from there. And there's some real practical applications of the inner game that anyone can take home and apply on a daily basis. So that's coming out also at the end of May. So I'll make sure you get access to that. So if people are interested in getting a little bit more longer form inner game story and practical application, I can get you that too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Incredible. So I'll give you a chance to throw in, like when I go through some big goal for someone, I'd say, like, what's your gold medal moment? Where do you see this? Like, what's your, if you want to share, you
yes,
don't
I'd
need
love
share.
to. Yes,
Sometimes
thank you.
it's sacred and people
No,
want to
no,
keep it
no,
themselves.
no.
Where do you see this going ultimately?
Sure. It's interesting. I'll say something about entrepreneurship that I've noticed is that entrepreneurs, and I'm sure, and anyone that's in a performance setting, you have to, at the same, you have to have a vision for the big vision, the big goal, right? You've got to set that and make it clear. But then in a millisecond, you've got to go to what is the thing, what is the next step? What is the tangible, rubber hits the road, in the trenches sort of decision or task that needs to be completed in order for that big vision to be realized, right? Sure. You can't live only in the big vision world, and you can't only live here in this place of like the next thing without the big vision. So being able to go between the two instantaneously is something that I love, and I still struggle with, but I love it because it is innate in our ability to set these goals and actually go out and achieve them, and you know all about that. But my big vision for the inner game is by LA 2028 that every athlete, or a lot of athletes from every country around the world, are using the inner game app. It's part of their life. It's part of the mental work, the mental training that they do, just the same way that they train physically on the tennis court or in the pool or on the golf course. It's a part of their life, and they're coming to LA in 2028 and talking about how it's changed their practice, how it's changed their ability to overcome obstacles, how it's helped them break records, how it's helped them get into Olympic position in the first place. That is my sort of big dream, and I know that's sports centric, but you could apply that to people around the world who are maybe not in a sports setting, but in a performance setting of some kind. The way that the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, and other inner game books have found a place in people's bookshelves all over the world, I want this app to have a home on people's phones that is a trusted source of this sort of pure wisdom that they can work with in order to achieve their goal. So that's my big vision for this, and I'll work on an even bigger one. So the next time we talk, I'll tell you what it is.
Yeah, more multiple. There's 2028 and beyond.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
There'll be
That's
another
right.
Olympics.
There will be. That's right.
No,
that's
I can
right.
see it. I see it. So I appreciate you spending the time with us.
Thank you.
Coming and being a part of this.
Yes. Actually, this is actually for you, but it's a funny story because it's signed, but it's not signed to you. It's signed to Bob, and the Bob that this is addressed to is Bob Bowman, who is a big fan of the inner game and someone that we've been working with.
I know Bob. I'll text him.
I figured you did. So if you now, I'll have to tell Bob here that Bob, you're still going to get your book, but I didn't have a signed copy to Seth, so I thought it was fitting that I would give you Bob Bowman's book, and I will make sure that Tim signs another copy for Bob so that I can give it to him in person. So, but in the meantime, I figured you might get a kick out of having Bob Bowman's copy on your bookshelf.
Well, you know who Bob is. It's Michael Phelps's coach.
Yes.
And, I've been a huge fan of Bob for a long time. Not just Michael, but beyond. And now in the collegiate space, he's won 3 consecutive national championships with 2 different schools, back to back to back.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to coach all these other Olympians. And he's all about the inner game, the mental side of things.
Yeah.
So I probably will take a picture of this and say, Bob,
Please do.
You can get your copy if you come to our show. But no, I appreciate that.
Of course.
Highly recommend this to anyone out there
Yeah.
in any space. So again, thank you. This has been
Yeah.
a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate
Awesome.
it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.